Now you will pay for all my sleepless nights, for all the pains you've caused. Ejina woke up the next morning, only to discover how small he has become. In a certain village called Amako, a certain lady named Nedima married her charming heartthrob, Ejina. They were so in love that they both became the topic among young people in their village. As time went by, Ejina began to succumb to the allure of other women in the village. Ejina was seen with women on different occasions at different places. Words got to Nedima about her husband's betrayal, but each time, she would dismiss it as mere rumors. Despite Nedima's beauty and loyalty, Nedima consistently faced betrayal from Ejina. There came this particular day. Ejina was standing and flirting with a young beautiful woman in the bush. A woman caught them red-handed and ran all the way from the bush to his house to inform Nedima of what she has witnessed. Nedima cried uncontrollably and she became a shadow of herself. The once happy married life became a torture. Nedima woke up one day and decided to pack her things and leave without informing her husband. She wept uncontrollably as she walked through the bush paths. Far into her journey, Nedima stumbled upon a mysterious clearing. And within this clearing appeared a mystical being who told her not to be afraid, that she was there to help her. She consoled Nedima and introduced herself as Ijele. Ijele was the former wife of the king who was banished from the village. She tried to cook for the king while she was on her menstrual period. Amanko tradition forbids this because it was believed that it will make the king vulnerable to their enemies. They believed that it was a set-up plan to neutralize the king's protection and assassinate him. For this reason, Ijele was banished while she left the village about to cross the sacred river on Ekede back to her own village. The river swallowed her because it was a forbidden day to go to the river. No one knew her whereabouts after that day until she appeared to Nedima, now a bad spirit seeking for revenge. She asked Nedima to make a wish in exchange for her loyalty. Nedima, now desperate for revenge, accepted the offer without hesitation. She wished for the ability to control and turn anyone into a dwarf. She thought of this in order to make her husband unattractive to other women. Armed with her newfound power, Nedima returned to the village with confidence and vengeance. Welcomed by her husband, who has been looking all over for her. He also wondered why his wife have a packed bag on her back. But Nedima explained that she was at the river to wash some clothes. The night came while Ejina was sleeping. Nedima began incantation and eventually turned her husband into a dwarf. Now you will pay for all my sleepless nights, for all the pains you've caused. Ejina woke up the next morning, only to discover how small he has become. He ran in fear to his wife, who showed no sign of surprise or worries over his new condition. Rather, she tried to shut him up. That was when it dawned on him that Nedima knew what happened to him. Words of Nedima's spiritual abilities spread throughout the village, instilling fear. In no time, people gathered in Ejina's compound to see what happened to him. Nedima began to command respect, and with time, she was able to convince many women to take charge from the men through her spiritual powers. She began to exert her powers on every man in the village. She succeeded in turning all the men in the village into dwarfs, convincing their wives to take charge and control of them. Nedima began to abuse the power so much, using it to settle personal problems and manipulate others for her own personal gain. She also turns the king to a dwarf for challenging her. The village fell in disarray as Nedima's reign of terror continued unchecked. Nedima was once again visited by the dark spirit of Ijele. This time, she asked that the village begin to make offerings to her. The king, now worried about their safety, secretly went to the chief priest to seek ways to counter Nedima's dark magic. The chief priest explained that the roaming spirit was the spirit of his late wife, who was banished for making his food while she was menstruating. He further explained that the former queen did not have any evil intention, rather she was trying to please the king with his favorite meals, while he skipped her mind that she was menstruating, since most of the meals were prepared by the maidens in the palace. The chief priest decided that the spirit of the late queen must be appeased. He asked the king to go home and inform the elders, and also prepare some men to go on a journey to the evil forest to get the golden box that will be used to neutralize the power she gave to Nedima. The king got to the palace and gathered the elders. He informed them of what the chief priest said and the instructions the chief priest has given. There were indications. Immediately the king mentioned it. 4 men were chosen to retrieve the golden box, determined to save the village. At this point, Nedima's grip on the village tightens as she becomes increasingly paranoid and ruthless in her pursuit of power. The 4 chosen men set out on the dangerous journey and were faced with numerous challenges, including encounters with mystical creatures guarding the golden box. Despite the obstacles, the men succeeded, fueled by their love for their village and determination. The men returned to the village and Ejina was the chosen one to wield the golden box against Nedima according to the instruction of the chief priest. Meanwhile, Nedima has sensed danger and she has decided to take the fight to the chief priest, but she was defeated by the power of the gods of the land and she ran back for safety. Ejina was invited and after some cleansing by the chief priest, he handed over the golden box to him. On reaching the entrance of his compound, he bumped into his wife, who was struck at the sight of the golden box. Nedima continued to struggle with her own powers against Ejina and the golden box. As the battle reaches its climax, Ejina manages to weaken Nedima's power over him and the whole village. Nedima is defeated and now on the ground, wondering what came over her. Ejina, moved by compassion, rushes to Nedima's side despite the pain she has caused him. Nedima cried and asked the village for forgiveness. At this point, the chief priest stepped in and asked the village to forgive Nedima, that it was not her fault, that it was the anger that made her vulnerable to accept such an evil offer without weighing the consequences. The chief priest further preached peace and also explained that a lot will change in the village with the return of the golden box. He took the golden box from Ejina and returned back to his shrine without the men, becoming normal again, while informing everyone to go home. There was confusion in the land. They all obeyed and returned, still confused about the situation. 2 days later, words were sent by the chief priest to the king to gather all the villagers at the village square, that the essence of the gathering was to make a new covenant that will bind the village from then on. The people gathered at the village square, including the king. The chief priest arrived with the golden box and kept it at the center. He informed everyone that the purpose of this gathering was to right the wrongs of the past. He further explained that the village murdered an innocent queen and her soul needs to be appeased. He went further to explain that Nedima was only a tool that was used to take revenge for killing her, and that each time the golden box is returned, a new law has to be made or the old one will be amended before it's returned. The chief priest further said that all men must practice the sacredness of marriage and promise not to cheat on their wife before they can be made normal again. And he further said that anyone who goes against this law in the future would automatically become a dwarf or die of a strange illness. The men looked at themselves with uncertainty and later agreed, desperate to live their normal life again. The women jumped with joy, embracing the new tradition. From then on, the village of Amako became the best village any woman would wish to marry. The chief priest began some incantation with the golden box. He sprinkled some water from the golden box and asked them to go home and gather at the same place before morning. But before then, he promised that before they could come back for the next meeting, that all of them would become normal again. By the time the men gathered again together, they were all back to normal as promised by the chief priest. They thanked the gods for making them well again. The chief priest informed them that it was time for them to appease the dead queen. They walked towards the river bank where the queen drowned and offered some prayers and also made some offerings to the river to appease the spirit of the late queen. According to the instruction of the gods, they returned to the village, happy and thanking their gods for rescuing their land. Women of Amako village looked forward to the future with a new hope and optimism, grateful to the gods for making them realize the worth of women and that not all good gestures from women are with ulterior motives. Some were born out of love, just as in the case of the queen who died while trying to make her husband, the king, happy.